What if I told you that everything you think is real, money, countries, religions, even human rights, is actually just a story we all agreed to believe? And that 70,000 years ago, we were just ordinary animals who somehow learned to tell these stories so powerful they conquered the entire planet. In today's video, we're diving deep into one of the most mind-blowing books ever written, *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari. We'll uncover the 3 revolutionary moments that transformed humans from insignificant apes into the rulers of Earth. You'll discover how imaginary stories like money and religion actually built our entire civilization, why the agricultural revolution might have been humanity's biggest mistake, and how the scientific revolution set us on a path to become gods ourselves. But here's the thing. We're now standing at the most dangerous crossroads in human history. We have godlike powers to reshape life itself. But we still have the desires and emotions of Stone Age animals. The choices we make in the next few decades could determine whether humanity reaches an incredible future or writes its own ending. So buckle up, because this journey through 70,000 years of human history is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about being human. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never look at the world the same way again. Let's get started. Do you ever wonder why we humans, for all our advancements, are still so troubled? Why, even when we have everything, there's a feeling of emptiness? Why do we chase after money? Why do we fight in the name of religion and country? This audio series will give you the answers to these whys. It will show you why you do what you do and why you think what you think. It will give you a new sense of control over your own mind, your beliefs, and your entire life. Imagine you're sitting in a time machine, traveling 70,000 years into the past, and watching how an insignificant animal took over the whole world. This series is for those who don't just want to live, but want to understand the meaning of their existence. For those who are tired of the herd mentality and want to know how this all got started. We're going to talk about a fictional story that turned us into gods. We'll talk about a deception that all of us fell into, and happily so. If you're afraid to question your beliefs, if you aren't ready to face the truth that you and all of us are part of a massive imaginary story, then perhaps this audio series isn't for you. But if you have courage, then get ready, because your world is about to change. So let's begin the story of humans. Our story. Chapter 1. The Cognitive Revolution. The moment we became storytellers. Picture the world as it was about 70,000 years ago. We, that is, Homo sapiens, were not the only humans on this earth. There were other human species just like us, such as the sturdy Neanderthals living in Europe, or Homo erectus living in Asia. Back then, we Homo sapiens weren't anything special. We were somewhere in the middle of the food chain. Of course. Here is the next part of the series, continuing from where we left off. We were scared of hunting the big animals, and mostly we'd scavenge what was left behind by other predators or hunt smaller creatures. We were an insignificant animal with no real impact on the world. Then, suddenly, something happened that changed everything. Science says there was a small change in our brains, a tiny tweak in our DNA, an accidental mutation. This is what the author Yuval Noah Harari calls the cognitive revolution. So, what exactly was this change? It was the change in our language. Now, you might say, but other animals have language too. Monkeys can shriek to warn that a lion is coming. Bees can dance to show where the flowers are. And you're absolutely right. But our language had a unique quality that no other animal possessed: the power to gossip and to use our imagination. We couldn't just say, "There is a lion by the river." We could also say, "This morning, I saw a lion by the river." We could talk about the past. We could also say, "Tomorrow morning, we will all hunt that lion together." We could plan for the future. But the biggest and most revolutionary power was the ability to talk about things that don't actually exist, things that are present only in our shared imagination. Things like ghosts, gods, nations, corporations, laws, and money. You will never hear a chimpanzee say, "If you give me that banana after you die." You will go to monkey heaven, where you will receive countless bananas. That power belongs only to us. This ability to believe in fictional stories gave us the unique capacity to cooperate in massive numbers. Think about it. A chimpanzee can live in a group of 50 or maybe 100 at most. Any larger than that, and the group falls into conflict and chaos because they can only trust those they know personally. But we humans can work together with thousands, millions, even billions of strangers. How? By believing in a common story. An American soldier can give his life for another American soldier he has never even met. Why? Because they both believe in the shared story called the United States of America. Two lawyers who have never met can work together to defend a corporation. Why? Because they both believe in the story of law and justice. Thousands of people will work for years to build a cathedral or a temple. Why? Because they believe in the story of a God. What are companies like Google, Amazon, or Ford? They are just stories. A set of rules written on paper that millions of people agree to believe in. Armed with this new power, Homo sapiens moved out of Africa and spread across the entire world. Wherever they went, the giant animals of that land began to go extinct. The giant kangaroos of Australia, the massive mammoths of America, all of them fell prey to our ancestors. We even wiped out other human species, like the Neanderthals. We became the greatest predators on the planet. We took a leap up the food chain and placed ourselves at the very top. All of this was possible because we could create stories and believe in them. We had begun to conquer the world, but hidden within this victory was a very important question. Did this power also make us happier? Was ruling the world our destiny? Or had we unknowingly set off down a path that would lead us into a massive trap? We conquered the world, but were we happy? Or was this just the beginning of a great trap? We'll find the answer to that question in the next chapter, where we will talk about the biggest fraud in history, one that we are still stuck in today. Chapter 2, The Agricultural Revolution, History's Biggest Fraud. When we think of the Agricultural Revolution, a very pleasant image comes to mind. We think of it as a great leap forward for humanity. We gave up our wandering, hunter-gatherer lifestyle, settled down in one place, learned to farm, built villages and cities, and began a civilized life. We're taught in school that the invention of farming was a symbol of human progress. But Yuval Noah Harari challenges this entire notion. He says that the agricultural revolution was the biggest fraud in the history of the human race. It was a trap that Homo sapiens fell into with ease, and one we have not been able to escape to this day. This might come as a shock, quack quack, but let's dig into it a little deeper. Until about 10,000 years ago, our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. They roamed the wild, hunted animals, and gathered fruits and roots. What was their life like? Research suggests that they were far healthier and happier than we are. They only worked for a few hours a day. The rest of their time was spent resting, playing, and socializing. Their diet was incredibly diverse. They ate all sorts of fruits, vegetables, and meats, which gave them every kind of nutrient they needed. They had no anxiety about the future. If they found food for today, that was enough. They'd worry about tomorrow when it came. They had no permanent property, and therefore no fear of theft. Their lives were simple and relatively free of stress. Then, some of them started to cultivate a few plants, like wheat, rice, and corn. They thought this would make life easier. Now they wouldn't have to wander around searching for food. They'd have plenty of grain in one place. But they were wrong. It was a massive deception. The truth is, humans didn't domesticate wheat. Wheat domesticated humans. Think about it. What does a stalk of wheat want? It wants to be spread far and wide. It wants the rocks and pebbles cleared from its path. It wants to be protected from weeds. It wants water, and it wants security from insects and pests. And who did all of this? Humans did. Man now began to toil in the fields from morning to night. He plowed the land, sowed the seeds, spent hours watering the plants, removed the weeds, and guarded the crops. His entire life began to revolve around that wheat plant. His freedom was stripped away. His diet now depended almost entirely on grain, which led to a deficiency of other essential nutrients in his body. Living in one place and in close proximity to domestic animals caused new diseases to spread. A failed harvest meant starvation and death. We conquered the world, but were we happy? Or was this just the beginning of a great trap? We'll find the answer to that question in the next chapter, where we will talk about the biggest fraud in history, one that we are still stuck in today. Chapter 2, The Agricultural Revolution, History's Biggest Fraud. When we think of the agricultural revolution, a very pleasant image comes to mind. We think of it as a great leap forward for humanity. We gave up our wandering, hunter-gatherer lifestyle, settled down in one place, learned to farm, built villages and cities, and began a civilized life. We're taught in school that the invention of farming was a symbol of human progress. But Yuval Noah Harari challenges this entire notion. He says that the agricultural revolution was the biggest fraud in the history of the human race. It was a trap that Homo sapiens fell into with ease, and one we have not been able to escape to this day. This might come as a shock, quack quack. We began to grow more grain to feed more children, and we began to have more children to grow more grain. It was a cycle that was impossible to break. So, the agricultural revolution did not give us food security. It gave us a population explosion, malnutrition, diseases, and social inequality. We traded freedom for slavery. It was a deal that looked very good on the surface, but turned out to be incredibly costly in the long run. Now the question arises. When millions of people began to live together in one place, how was order maintained in society? How were these millions of strangers brought together? How were they controlled? This is where humans came up with 3 tremendous imaginary inventions that united us and laid the foundation for turning the entire world into a global village. What were those 3 inventions so powerful that even enemies would bow down before them? What were the stories that all of humanity came to believe in without question? We began to grow more grain to feed more children, and we began to have more children to grow more grain. It was a cycle that was impossible to break. So, the agricultural revolution did not give us food security. It gave us a population explosion, malnutrition, diseases, and social inequality. We traded freedom for slavery. It was a deal that looked very good on the surface, but turned out to be incredibly costly in the long run. Now, the question arises. When millions of people began to live together in one place, how was order maintained in society? How were these millions of strangers brought together? How were they controlled? This is where humans came up with 3 tremendous imaginary inventions that united us and laid the foundation for turning the entire world into a global village. What were those 3 inventions so powerful that even enemies would bow down before them? What were the stories that all of humanity came to believe in without question? Imagine the world before money existed. If you had boots and I needed them, and I had wheat, then we could trade with each other. This is called bartering, or the barter system. But this had many problems. Maybe you didn't need wheat at all. Maybe I didn't have enough wheat to equal the value of those boots. It was very complicated. To solve this very problem, money was invented. What is money? Is it just a piece of paper or a metal coin? No. Money is actually a system of trust. It's a story that we all believe in. We believe that the $100 bill in my hand will be accepted by any shopkeeper who will give me goods in exchange for it. That shopkeeper accepts that bill because he trusts that someone else will also accept that bill. It's an endless cycle of trust. Money's greatest power is that it's universal. It doesn't recognize any religion, race, or country. A Christian and a Muslim might fight over religious beliefs, but both will happily accept dollars or euros. Osama bin Laden hated America, but he had no problem with American dollars. Money is the only story that almost every human being believes in. It made trade easier, connected cities, and laid the foundation for a global economy. It taught us to trust strangers. It's humanity's most successful unifying force. It's such an imaginary reality that our world today couldn't survive even one day without it. The second great unifying force was empire. When we hear the word empire, images of cruel kings, wars, and exploitation come to mind. This is also true. Empires were built through violence and conquest. But they had another side too. Empires brought millions of people under the same political umbrella. they tried to give people of different cultures, languages, and races the same laws, the same language, and the same identity. The Roman Empire unified all of Europe and the Middle East. The Mauryan and Mughal empires brought vast parts of the Indian subcontinent under one rule. Because of these empires, ideas, technology, and culture spread very quickly from one place to another. The world we live in today, where almost every country has similar political and legal systems, has its roots in these ancient empires. They removed the walls between us and them and tried to create a sense of a larger, more unified us. And the third, and perhaps most powerful unifying force, was religion. Religions worked one step ahead of money and empires. They gave the idea of a universal and supernatural system. They said that we are all children of the same God, and we should follow certain moral rules that were made not by humans, but by some divine power. Universal religions like Buddhism, Christianity, and Islam gave the message that their truth was not for one country or race, but for all of humanity. These religions bound millions of strangers together in brotherly relationships. A Christian from Texas could consider a Christian from Morocco his brother whom he had never even met, because both believed in the same God and the same story. Religions gave people a shared identity and a shared purpose in life. So money, empire, and religion, these three great stories work together to weave scattered humanity into one fabric. They transformed us into a global society. But the story didn't end there. About 500 years ago, another revolution happened. A revolution that multiplied the power of all three of these forces many times over and set humans on the path from being nature's most powerful creature to becoming gods themselves. That revolution was the scientific revolution. But was this power, this ability to become gods, a blessing for us? Or was it a curse that was leading us toward our own destruction? We'll find the answer to this thrilling question in the next chapter. Next, Chapter 4, The Scientific Revolution, when we said, we don't know. For thousands of years, humans had been living with the help of stories like money, empire, and religion. The answers to all the world's important questions were believed to exist in religious books. If someone wanted to know something, they would go to some wise preacher or pastor, and he would give them answers from the Holy Scriptures. It was believed that whatever was worth knowing had already been written down. The source of knowledge was in the past. But about 500 years ago in Europe, a new and revolutionary way of thinking was born. This thinking was very simple, but very powerful. This thinking was, we don't know. That was the moment when the scientific revolution began. For the first time, humans collectively accepted their ignorance. We admitted that we don't know much about the universe, about our bodies, and about this world. And whatever we think we know might also be wrong. This admission itself became the engine of the scientific revolution. When you admit that you don't know, only then do you try to find out. Science said that knowledge is not in books, but in observation and experimentation. Look at the world, ask questions about it, experiment, use mathematics, and then reach some conclusion. And that conclusion is also not the final truth. Maybe tomorrow, some new evidence will come along and prove your theory wrong. This way of thinking opened the doors of knowledge. Newton discovered the laws of gravity. Darwin explained that we are descendants of apes, and Einstein completely changed our understanding of time and space. Suddenly, humanity began acquiring knowledge at an incredible speed. We discovered the world of microorganisms. We began to understand the mysteries of the universe, and we started learning about the complex machinery inside our own bodies. But science wasn't just about knowledge. It was also about power. Soon, rulers and businessmen realized that scientific knowledge could give them unlimited power. They started giving money to scientists. This new relationship created a powerful cycle. Science gave birth to new technology. Technology gave empires and merchants even more power, and the money gained from that power was invested back into science. Science, imperialism, and capitalism formed an unbreakable alliance. When Christopher Columbus set out to find India, he was funded by the Queen of Spain. When he reached America, he conquered that continent. His ships carried teams of scientists and mapmakers. When Captain Cook reached Australia, he also had scientists with him. The expansion of empires was no longer just about conquering land. It had also become about conquering knowledge. This revolution completely changed our everyday lives. The changes that happened in the last 200 years hadn't happened even in the previous 2,000 years. The Industrial Revolution gave us the power of steam and electricity. We built trains, cars, and airplanes. Medical science gave us antibiotics and vaccines, which more than doubled our average lifespan. We eliminated terrible diseases like smallpox and polio. We unlocked the power of the atom, with which we can both build cities and destroy them in an instant. We reached the moon. Today, we can connect with the entire world through our mobile phones. All of this is the gift of the scientific revolution. We have conquered nature's laws one by one and acquired powers that were once believed to belong only to gods and goddesses. We are at the peak of unprecedented power. We have largely controlled hunger, disease, and war. Today, more people in the world die from obesity than from starvation. More people die from old age than from infectious diseases. More people commit suicide than are killed in wars. This is a tremendous achievement of humanity. But this power also comes with a price. We have caused heavy damage to the environment. The threat of nuclear war always hangs over our heads. And the most important question, has all this progress, all this power made us happy? Or have we just become a restless and unsatisfied species? Now we have reached a point where we have the ability to change not just the outside world, but humans themselves. We are standing at the threshold of the end of Homo sapiens and the beginning of a new species. What will that future look like? Will we become gods, or will we destroy ourselves in the very game we created? we will face this greatest and most frightening question in our final chapter. Chapter 5, An Animal That Became God. What happens next? We have completed a long journey of 70,000 years. From being a simple African animal, we have now become the undisputed rulers of this planet. We eliminated other humans. We wiped out giant animals. And now we are challenging the laws of nature themselves. We are the animal that became God. But what is the end of this story? What happens next? Yuval Noah Harari takes us through some possible paths for the future at the end of his book. Paths that are as thrilling as they are terrifying. We are at a point where the history of Homo sapiens might end and something completely new might begin. The first path is biological engineering. That is, changing Homo sapiens' body and mind through genetic engineering. Until now, we have been changing our tools, but now we are on the verge of changing ourselves. We can create humans who are more intelligent, stronger, whose memory never fades and who never age. We can even design our desires and emotions. Imagine a world where rich people can genetically modify their children to create superhumans, while poor people remain ordinary humans. This would create a gap in society that has never been seen in history. This would no longer be just the distance between rich and poor. This would be the distance between two completely different species. The second path is cyborg engineering, that is, combining the human body with machine parts. This has already begun. We use hearing aids, artificial hands, legs, and pacemakers. But in the future, this will go much further. We can directly connect our brains to computers and the internet. We can store our memories in the cloud. We can transfer our consciousness from one body to another or into a robot. We can become immortal in a way. But then, what would it mean to be human? Is that person whose half body is machine and whose brain is connected to the internet still a human? What happens to our identity, our soul? These questions force us to think about the very core of our humanity. And the third and most revolutionary path is the creation of non-organic life, that is, artificial intelligence. We are trying to create a consciousness that is not biological, that is not based on carbon, an intelligence made of silicon. If we succeed in this, it will be the greatest event in the 4 billion-year history of life. Until now, life was bound by certain biological rules. But true artificial intelligence will be free from all these limitations. It can change itself at will. It can increase its intelligence infinitely. And once such superintelligence is created, what will happen to Homo sapiens? Will we become its pets, like how cattle and buffalo are our pets today? Or will it consider us a useless and irrelevant species and eliminate us? Among all these possibilities, Harari raises a very important question. We are acquiring all these powers, but are we happy? Is an average human today happier than a hunter-gatherer? All the statistics and research show that this is not necessarily true. We have made a lot of progress in the external world, but our internal world, our level of happiness, is perhaps still the same. We have the power to change the world, but we don't know ourselves. We don't even know what we want. The most important and final question of the book is this: what do we want to become? No, rather, What do we want to want? What do we want to want? We have godlike power to create and destroy. But our desires and emotions are still like those of Stone Age animals. We are an irresponsible God who doesn't know what to do with his power. And nothing could be more dangerous than this. We are at the most important crossroads in history. And our next step will determine whether this amazing story of humanity will go toward a glorious future or write the script of its own end. Thank you so much for staying with me throughout this entire journey. We saw how a cognitive revolution 70,000 years ago gave us the power to weave stories. Then, how the deception of the agricultural revolution tied us to one place and created inequality in society. We learned how imaginary stories like money, empire, and religion brought us together, and then how the scientific revolution showed us the path to accepting our ignorance and acquiring godlike powers. And finally, we are standing at that door to the future where we can end our own species and create something new. The essence of this audiobook is that our entire world, our society, our economy, everything is based on stories that we collectively believe in. Knowing this can give you a new freedom. You can understand that things that seem like unchanging truths to you might just be a story, and stories can be changed. If this story has forced you to think, if it has created even one new question in your mind, then please make my small effort successful. Like this video. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you found most surprising. See you in the next story with a new ideas. Thank you.